Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 49. I'm Vance Bastion here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hello.
We're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, Gayleen Froese joins us to discuss her latest novel, followed by our review of the first holiday movie of the year with guest reviewer MD New. And then Baz and I will share what's held our attention this week. So if you like hearing updates from queer content creators, support us on Patreon, hit our merch store. But now, on to our guest. Gayleen Froese is an LGBTQ writer of detective living in Edmonton, Canada. She has appeared on Canadian Learning Television's A Total Write-Off, won the second season of the 3-Day Novel Contest on BookTelevision, and as a singer-songwriter, showcased at festivals across Canada. She has worked as a radio writer and talk show host, an advertising creative director, and a communications officer. A past resident of Saskatoon, Toronto, and northern Saskatchewan, Gayleen now lives in Edmonton with novelist Laird Ryan States in a home that includes dogs, geckos, snakes, monitor lizards, and Marlowe the tegu. When not writing, she can be found kayaking, photographing unsuspecting wildlife, and playing cooperative board games, viciously competitive card games, and tabletop RPGs. Gayleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
That is an incredible resume.
Yeah, when do you sleep?
So we have to ask, where did the first fire, the first passion to put pen to paper and tell stories to people start?
I mean, genuinely, I wouldn't be able to say. As a little kid, when I played with, well, I had a whole set of plastic animals and dolls and all that stuff. I would spend an hour setting up a whole scene. Like, these live over here, these over here. This is what the plot is going to be. This is how it's going to work. And I had the whole thing worked out. I'd be down there for 2 hours, and my mom would, be like, "Okay, come upstairs for lunch," but I haven't started playing yet.
Aw.
You have to tell the story, right?
Right.
So I was just always like that. And then I just started to write, and you just, I'm sure if you write yourself, you know how it is. You just keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we're here to discuss your latest novel, The Girl Whose Luck Ran Out.
Yes.
Ta-da!
Yay. Woohoo. So pretty.
It is
It is
gorgeous. So, detective novel.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So it is the story of a detective named Ben Ames who lives in Calgary, and he's he used to be a cop. That didn't work out for him, so he's decided to go out on his own. And he has a case where a woman has come and said, "Look, my sister, she's a university student. She is missing. She's not like her. The cops don't take it seriously because she's a university student, so they figure she's flighty. So could you just look for her?" So okay, fine, takes the case. But that same night, his ex-boyfriend comes through town. His ex-boyfriend's a musician, and he's touring, and they haven't spoken in about 7 years. It's fine. Everything's fine. Just haven't spoken in 7 years. It went
Sure.
well. And all of a sudden he gets a text, and it turns out that his ex has pneumonia. He winds up having to cancel his show that night, and Ben, in a spasm of I don't know what, says, "I don't. Well, you can stay at my house." So he winds up having to handle the case and deal with the fact that he's got this person in his house that he has maybe a few small issues with.
One or
That
two.
been maybe unresolved for nearly a decade. And so he winds up just having this tag along for the case. And so they wind up working on it together, and also sort of working out what happened with them and why.
And one of the topics you had mentioned just in our communications back and forth is the difference between how male-male romance and male-female romance are viewed in this sort of novel.
Totally. Yeah, from the start, when I started sort of reaching out and doing quizzes and all that sort of thing, and also just talking to everyone from readers to other writers to editors that I'm friends with, they're like, "Oh, you're writing a romance?" And I said, "Well, no, it's a detective novel. I mean, there's a mystery and it gets solved, and it's um, there's the relationship is probably about half the story. So yes, it's a big part of it, but it's not a romance novel."
Hmm.
"Oh no, it is, because and I thought about that, and I thought, well, I guess maybe. And then I thought back, see, as a kid, my dad used to just throw whatever he was finished reading into my room,
Okay.
uh, which, by the way, 9 is too young for Ken Follett. I just want to say, like, I mean,
Okay.
I fully processed some of what I read in those books. But Rex Stout, Nero Wolfe books, Robert B. Parker Spencer books, great, and really interesting books because they got into things like the philosophy of what makes a good person and what do you owe to your society and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Terrific. And I thought about those books, and I thought particularly in Robert B. Parker Spencer novels, his relationship with Susan Silverman is a huge part of the books. There's a whole arc where it's all about the fact that the relationship's on the rocks and she's seeing someone else, and this goes on for 3 books. And in the final book of that arc, he's actually going to find her because she's called him and said, this boyfriend I'm with, I don't think is the greatest guy, and I need your help. Those are not called romances.
No.
No one ever suggested they were. And there's no way you can avoid the fact that these are books that are very much focused on their relationships. So why are people so different about this? And why are they looking at my book and saying, and again, I got to say, this is nothing against romance. It's fine. It's a genre like any other.
Right.
What gets me is that when you mischaracterize a book, then you mislead readers who probably won't like it. And you also turn off readers who go, well, I don't read romance. I know, but you read mysteries. You'll like this. I promise. It's okay.
Right.
And what I find really interesting, though, is it's not just that it's a bit awkward and difficult for sales, but that, you start wondering why, right? Why do people do this? And do you like, this is going to seem very weird and a tangent, but do you like trivia, pub quizzes, that kind of thing?
I've been to a couple. I don't seek them out.
Okay. So people who are really into them, they say that one of the ways you solve a multiple choice question is you say, what doesn't belong here?
Mm-hmm.
So if the question is like, where is the most photographed building in the world? And your choices are New York, London, Paris, or Rockport. What? Why is Rockport there? That doesn't belong. It's not, a famous city. It's not a big city. Well, that's obviously the answer. That's the reason it's there.
Right.
And I feel like to a lot of people, a homosexual romance is one of those why is it there moments. It's not quote unquote normal. It's not expected. It's not just part of a story. It's, oh, well, that's got to be there for a reason. And so they fixate on it. Well, this book must be a romance. Which is, I think, really unfair. And also if you want to see, and I do, normalization of something that's, just part of the whole quilt of human experience.
Right.
I don't care for that attitude. And so I think that's the thing that really makes me the most, what are you doing when they say, well, you've written a romance? Well, no, again,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a mystery, and I grew up on Rex Stout and Parker and Chandler and Hammett and all these people. That's, like little 9-year-old, 8-year-old me was reading those books. This has been in my DNA for a really long time. I know what I'm writing. And, when you say that, it makes me uncomfortable about why you feel that way.
Right. Well, and there's a huge disparity too, because you're getting that primarily, I'm assuming, from straight audiences. Because I wrote an urban fantasy novel, and the main character, while gay, does not have a romance in the first book at all. Not
Hey,
even an inkling of it. I was at a book event, an arts crafts book event, and a gay man walked up and asked about my book and asked about the romance. And I said, well, there isn't one in the first book. It's being set up for the second. And he threw it back down. He's like, why bother?
whoa.
And so that's the flip side of the
Yeah.
readership. It's it was an urban
Well,
fantasy. It
okay,
had to
I'm
do with supernatural powers. It wasn't,
I'm
again.
having read your book, and I love it. It's one of my favorites of all time. But the thing is, I think for queer people, the oppression of our expression of sexuality is, I think, so new to the community that we're able to express it that I think we're really starved for that representation, that equality in representation. Nobody thinks anything of in a movie of a straight, romantic sexual liaison happening on film. But boy, if 2 guys or 2 gals get it together, what is this important? You get all that kind of thing, and I think that from the community side, we are starved for that equality. So I can understand why somebody said, why bother? Although I think that's really fucking rude. But on the other side of it, I think that, in the case of what we're talking about in this disparity, I think it's because of that dynamic that we have not had proper queer representation, that when we do get it, we make a big deal out of it. And I think straight people do too, because it's new to them. But, hey, guess what? We've been around for all of human history. So, it's just nobody's talked or shown it or wrote about it as much as they are now, and I think
Right.
that's playing a factor in this whole thing.
But should that change the genre of a book?
Oh, no. I don't think so. Not at all.
No. No, and I also think that, once if you're looking at representation, I mean, to start with, to show the thing that is the most oppressed, which is the relationship and the expression of sexuality and all that. I get that for sure. But in terms of full representation, there is such a thing as being a gay man who doesn't have anyone in their life. There is such a
Right.
thing as being
Right.
a woman who's
Absolutely.
and I, you want to see that full spectrum of possibility and just being a full human being with all these experiences.
Right.
And I love the idea that your romance is being set up for another book, that it is enough,
Oh, a
that
thread.
the relationship has enough depth and that it's enough about who the people are and getting to know each other and all that you would say, yeah, I mean, in other books, this is what the relationship's going to be. I think that's great.
Thanks. So, does Ben have another book in you?
Yes, this will be a series. I've actually written the sequel already, and my publisher picked it up, so that's good. That's going
Nice.
to come out
Yay.
early next year. So
Very nice.
yeah, so that one was a lot of fun. I wrote that one. So this one is very like detective style.
Procedural kind of thing.
Well, I mean, procedural, I think Ben would call generous.
Okay.
Like he walks around, talks to people, and bumps into walls until he finds out what happened. Which is very much the Chandler style. Like if you read those books, I mean, Raymond Chandler always said, just have a guy walking with a gun. I recently found out that one thing Chandler actually did was that he wrote a lot of things for like Black Mass magazine, and he read all these short stories, and then you want
Cool.
novels from me now, so he'd repurpose. And so that's one of the reasons why there's so much sort of disjointed, like, I'm gonna hit you on the head now you're unconscious, now we can sort of sew two short stories together. When you wake up, you're in a new short story, but you'll never know. Which is really fun. But yeah, Ben kind of wanders around in this one. So the second one is kind of locked down. It's in Calgary, Alberta, and it's during what we around here would call like, we've gone into the deep freeze, where it is before wind chill, you're in your minus 30s to 40s, and then it goes below that even with the wind chill, and it's legitimately dangerous outside if you're not dressed for it and you're not, being careful. And so everyone is locked in this theater, not by locks, but by the fact that it's so goddamn cold outside. And a murder happens there, and it's a whodunit. Very sort of Agatha Christie style, we've got all the suspects and where was everybody at the time of, and that kind of thing. What are their secret motives? All of that. That's exhausting. I don't know if either of you ever written like a proper whodunit?
No.
But I've wanted to. I've been watching a lot of Agatha Christie, and I've been reading, and yeah, and I kind of think it's like you have to know the end first and then work your way back.
So definitely that. But here's the thing they don't tell you. You know how when you write a book, especially if it's first person, but even when it's like third person, it's like there's a stage, and that's where your characters are when the audience sees them. And you know what they're doing off stage, kind of vaguely, like you might not write that they went home, brushed their teeth, went to bed, but you know they did that. In a whodunit, you have to know what everyone is doing off stage all the time. Because you have to know that at 7 p.m., if somebody was doing something in this room, this person either could or couldn't have walked by and seen that.
Right.
So I had an actual like layout of the space that I drew. And I got at the dollar store little soccer ball discs from the craft section. And I wrote people's names on the back all over this map. And then I took photos of it with my phone. So I wrote like on sticky notes, like 7 p.m. photograph, 7:05 p.m. photograph, and I moved the little dots around. That was how I kept track of where everybody was.
Can I just say, you just sang out to my tabletop RPG heart?
Right? I mean, these are transferable skills.
Yes, 100%.
right? And yeah, and then when my editor got the book, she was like, "Do you happen to have a map or something?" I was like, "Oh, honey."
Brilliant.
So yeah, but
Brilliant. Brilliant.
it is way more complicated, way more work. Like I enjoyed it, but I didn't until you dig into it, you don't realize what it's going to be.
Mhm. I love the fact that you mapped it out and took timeline pictures. That
Oh yeah.
is epic. All right.
Incredibly.
So, in the spirit of not asking spoilery questions, what would you like our listeners to know about The Girl Whose Luck Ran Out that I haven't asked?
Um, well, it's very Canadian, which means that often in Canada, we sort of get asked by Canadians, mostly Canadian publishers or whatever, "Oh, can you tone it down a little? Americans won't understand." You
You're
know,
kidding.
so don't reference this, don't reference that. Don't talk about this restaurant, don't talk about, these things. And it always kind of rubbed me wrong because I grew up again reading, Americans and Brits. I read the, Enid Blyton's famous
Yeah.
five books,
Yeah.
and I loved that they were
Yeah.
drinking something
You love the detail.
amazing.
Yeah.
I love that I don't know what these things are, and it's fascinating.
Right.
And also, I was perfectly capable. I didn't know what KEDs were when I read Pet Cemetery, but when you say a kid got knocked out of his KEDs, I'm pretty sure those were shoes. Like,
Mhm.
I can put it together. I'm not that dumb.
Mhm.
And neither are American readers, so I think they'll be okay. So I thought I was going to have a big fight on my hands when I got an American publisher. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll struggle. I'll fight for it. I'll get in as much as I can. And instead, they were like, "You're Canadian. That's great." My editor went and got the Canadian Oxford Dictionary, and they're fully supportive because they understand that this is really unusual.
Time and
And
setting is important.
yeah,
Super.
and
Exactly.
they're
That's
being taken on a
fantastic.
trip to the Kananaskis country, by Calgary and to the Rocky Mountains.
Well, I
So,
think it's also, the fact that Americans, well, any reader, I mean, I would think part of the draw of the book is you're exposed to something you wouldn't normally get to see.
Mhm.
yeah,
So it makes it that the setting becomes a character in and of itself that lures the reader in. So I think plus I love the fact, even in your bio, you had all my favorite Canadian, towns and words in there. I was just like, I'm loving this.
And see, for me, a book that captures the spirit of a place I haven't been becomes a vacation of the mind. I get to
Yeah.
leave my little house on my little
yeah,
street and go someplace I've never been.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love to like even the cold. Like I don't know, you read Richard Stevenson at all?
No.
Mm.
Oh, you're missing out. Really great queer mysteries, like so good, so
Oh.
for detective fiction, great characters, funny, smart, very smart. But there's a book where he's on a stakeout, and he and his friends are in this car. They don't want to be seen, so they deliberately fog up the windows with their breath. They're in
Nice.
Albany, New York. And I was just like, oh my God, I completely identify. Like, I mean, they used to joke that people from the prairies made really good tank operators because we were used to looking through a very small hole while driving.
That's epic.
Yep. So yeah, I love that stuff. I think that's great, and it's great
Yeah.
for people here who get to go like, aha, she's ripping on Boston pizza, and people who get to go, oh, I never knew about that, or I never saw
Yeah.
that
I
before.
never knew that was a thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
All right, and it's out now selling, and you've just teased the fact that book two's on its way, so folks should go out there and pick it up.
Yes. Yeah, we actually had my people at the publisher also really like things like spreadsheets and charts, and we had a whole spreadsheet. And then what happened is, I can say now, they were completely locked down from talking about it, and then it got embargoed, which is, I don't know if you know the term embargo in this context. I'm a comms person, so when they told me it was embargoed, I was like, oh, gotcha. What that means is that you're allowed to talk about it freely within a certain space, but you can't say anything publicly.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Whereas, yeah. So what happens when you embargo the press, which I do as rarely as possible, is you give them all the information and then you say, not until Thursday. Not until Thursday. Don't,
Okay.
or not until Thursday. So I got embargoed for a while, but I'm okay now. So what happened is Webtoons opened a serialized fiction thing called Yonder. And my publisher was, I think, on the fence about buying my magical realism, urban fantasy type book, The Dominion. And then Yonder came along and they were like, oh, this book would be perfect for serialization. So they got in touch with Yonder and said, we have this book, which they didn't, they hadn't bought it yet. And they made a whole deal. And then they caught up with me and they were like, oh, by the way, would you be okay if, and, meanwhile, they've been in discussions about what they're going to do with my book for a week. And I went, yeah, I'd be very okay with that. That sounds really cool. So that happened. So my book, The Dominion, is going to be on Yonder. We don't know when, because it's all down to when Yonder wants to put that out. So that has taken the whole schedule and went, pew! So
Right.
I have absolutely no idea. But I think the sequel is coming out in summer, early summer. And then, what I do know is, for those who read French and German, those two translations are coming out in January.
Oh, yay. Bravo.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, your website actually has all of the international buy links, which I thought was super helpful.
Yes. I mean, why not, right? Those are audiences too. And being Canadian, I get being left out. If you're Canadian, I understand.
Well, also super important because a lot of digital purchases are limited by region.
Yes.
So having those out there for people who are not US specific was perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of us are now, surf shark, being wherever we want to be in the digital world, but yeah, not everyone. So
Right, exactly. So we've already teased a bit about what's coming up next for you. Anything else you want to announce?
Yeah, so what happened, it's funny. When I was in radio, I was doing books and music, but it was definitely a job that you kind of did at work and then you went home. So you had your evenings. So I was pretty busy, but, and then I got into communications and there wound up being a lot more overtime and a lot of, that kind of thing. And so I got into a situation where I had written 2 books in the 2000s and I shopped them, sold them, did that thing. And then when I got this other job, I didn't stop writing because, as a writer, you never stop, but I did stop shopping because that's a lot of work. And as you know, that can be a huge investment of time. And it's a huge investment emotionally too. And I just didn't feel like I was there. So I started just amassing this pile of books that I've been writing, and then I had that the COVID epiphany, where you're at home and you got some time to think apart from the office. And you go, am I really liking this so much? So I wound up leaving the job I've been at for years. Took another job briefly. That wasn't a fit either. And so I kind of said, you know what? Let's just shake hands. I'm still in my sort of trial period, that 3-month period where we can both say no harm, no foul, and I'm out. And got on unemployment insurance for a little while because of that. And I have some books lying around. Shopping. So I wound up shopping the books. And now what's happened is that my publisher bought one book and said, we want a sequel. Can you get that started? Yep, no problem. But if we're going to be pulling out a spreadsheet and doing a schedule, I have to tell you that I have other books, and those books would be series of their own. Oh my God, you can tell words on my living.
You must be an author.
I utilize words so good.
All the bigly ones.
So yeah, I sent them. I had a book about a kid he's 18. He lives in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and he accidentally outs himself to his rednecky brother, and he gets superpowers on the same night.
Well, there you go.
And then his life becomes more complicated from there over the next couple of days. And so I had that book and they really loved it. And they said, yeah, we want this too. And then the senior editor called me up and she said, what's wrong with you? And I was like, okay, please tell me. I mean, I think I do, but tell me. And she said, the problem with you is that you're an excellent writer. You have too many good ideas, because the best thing is to have a series and just keep plugging away at it, because then you lock people in for sales, right? So you're like, and she goes, but we want to do this too. And this is obviously going to be a series. It's like, yeah. So she goes, you're going to spread yourself in multiple directions. I was like, yeah. And the worst news I have is that I have this other book yet. So I sent her The Dominion, and then they wound up picking that up too. So I'm going to have 3 series going.
Wow.
Or 2.
Oh,
two Ben Ames mysteries, and then one of the books about Gabe the superhero kid from North Battleford, then another Ben Ames mystery, and then the Dominion, and then another Ben Ames mystery, and then like so kind of go around the circle like that, because we said that mystery writers are very much the people who will like show up outside your house going, "Where's the next book? It's been 5 minutes. Where's the next book?" Talk.
yeah, right.
Whereas people who read other genres will wait 20 years for David Gerald to come out with the last War Against the Couture book. So I felt like, yeah, the other genres we can probably get away with stretching out a little bit more. So that's what we decided to do. So that was the spreadsheet. I don't know where we're at now, because as I say, that spreadsheet has been ripped up and thrown to the wind, but those were the plans.
So which social site is best for people to keep up with your updates as this evolves?
Facebook. Yeah, I was on Twitter, but then when half the staff got kicked out, I thought I'm going with them. So
Yeah, I saw your account had closed down.
yep, that's the why on that. It's unfortunate because Twitter is helpful in ways. My theory is that Twitter will probably wind up in other hands at some point. I think once a bunch of banks own it, they're going to be looking for a way to monetize it. So it'll probably be back in one form or another. But for now, I'm just standing off to the side and watching the show like everybody else.
Yeah, right.
I
Make
mean,
some popcorn
honestly,
and wait.
Someone
Yeah,
just has to
right.
put something shiny in front of him, and he'll go off and
Yeah,
chase the new shiny.
Well, I mean, as a comms person, it's fascinating. I mean, this has been a real lesson I can teach a lot of clients. And like, remember when I told you it was a very bad idea to do this, this, and this? Look, it really is.
Yep. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Ugh, not from me. I don't traffic in that.
But you have all the words.
Well,
And
the
they're
best
good words. Bigly words.
are so good. I have all the best words. Yeah, no, I think one thing I can say about writing sort of queer fiction is that I definitely, for a long time, felt like, oh, are people going to want to read that? Like, it's what I gravitated toward. I think because, being asexual, even before we were considered part of the queer community, we always felt that connection, right? Because our experiences are so often similar.
Well,
You get sort of pathologized, and it's a phase, and is there something wrong with you? And I had the classic 90s experience of a psychologist trying to convince me that I had been abused and repressed it, and all of that stuff, right? So you go through all of those things where you're being very medicalized, and or where you're dating someone because you're like, I can make myself feel the right things. If I see this person, and then feeling so bad in retrospect once you realize what your deal is, like, oh my God, it was so unfair to all those people, but I didn't know, and I just thought that everybody else, if I tried hard enough, and all of those things are commonalities, so that connection I always felt was there, and I was always really interested. And just most of my friends are queer, and this is just the community, right? But I felt like, I couldn't. People wouldn't want to read it. I had to sort of like dial that back. And I think, no, you don't have to dial it. You should be yourself and write what you want to write, what you're passionate about.
It's the authenticity that rings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you write what you're passionate about, that'll show. And if you write what you're not passionate about, that will also show.
That'll show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Gayleen Froese for being with us. Gayleen, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I had a great time talking to you. It was really fun.
And please sign up for another episode so we can get book 2 in the Ben Ames series.
Absolutely. Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Now, on to our review. Hey everybody, guess who came to join us for our holiday reviews this month? That's right, Mr. MD New. Marvin, welcome to the show as a reviewer.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It was fun.
And I hope it continues to be fun for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah. I think it will be. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So the first film that we're reviewing for you is Christmas at the Ranch, a 2021 release, but there were some timestamp things in there that indicated it came out in 2022, so I'm not sure where the copyright lies. Premise of the film: when Haley Hollis returns to her family ranch to try to save it from closure, she wasn't banking on spending so much time with ranch hand Kate, or falling for her. Dun dun dun. So, Marvin, what did you think? Guest reviewer gets to go first.
Ooh, guest reviewer. So I actually really liked it. I thought it was fun. I mean, it's very formulaic. It is kind of exactly what I had expected. I thought that overall they did a really good job. I sat there and I watched it and I was like, okay, this is a cute holiday movie that, I got into and I was rooting for the characters and, it was just a good time. I had fun. It was enjoyable.
Yep, I got done, and the first words out of my mouth were, "This is the most Hallmark film that Hallmark never produced."
Yeah, exactly.
It was wonderfully sweet and tender. Um, I did feel like they missed a couple of marks, but we can get to that in a second. Baz, what did you think?
Uh, I'm gonna be the fiscal to you guys being Ebert. I don't know. uh, I I I wanted to love this movie, but my husband and I were thrown out for so many reasons, and it boils down for us the script and the continuity was a real issue with this movie, and I'll get to that when we start talking about the details of the film. So, um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, if you want to watch something that's just lighthearted and fluff and Christmassy, this is a good one for it.
It absolutely is. So, one of the pros I would like to present to folks is that the world that this story takes place in, the fact that these two women had a relationship was a non-issue. I don't think much like Schitt's Creek, it was just part of the world. People had a relationship. The fact that it was two women did not matter. I think the closest we got to that mattering at all was when Kate was talking about growing up. But even that, she presented as her parents had her wealthy socialite parents had more of a problem with her wanting to be a ranch hand than with her being a lesbian. So kudos to great storytelling that just presents people as people.
Can I just say that it was lovely to see queer icon Lizzie Wagner in
Yes.
something again? Although I
Yes.
will confess, I just wanted one moment of her running out to that and to grab a Christmas tree, and pull it out of the ground. And I just wanted that. But, that was the gay boy in me screaming for that stuff.
Yeah, I started calling her the bionic Mima.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
I agree. I thought, yeah, Lizzie Wagner. I mean, that was just fantastic. I loved every scene she was in. It was perfect. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's the Bionic Woman! Yay!
Yep.
And she looked
And she
amazing.
did do the one thing where she went like this at one point. And I went,
Yes. I think that was her nod to the audience. Yep.
Uh,
All right. Should we dive into a couple of the problems you had?
sure.
Guys, you want to go first on that one?
Okay, so I have a couple, well, more than a couple. I have a continuity issue with the movie in its entirety. Um, the first one that threw me out for a huge loop was that they tried to sort of say it was San Francisco that Haley worked at.
Haley, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but you showed a B-roll clip of the Gaslamp Quarter in San Diego, where I am. And I saw that logo and I'm like, that's here. Is she in San Diego? And then later say, oh, I live in San Francisco. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because I can go find that building and I saw the Gaslamp Quarter sign. So someone didn't do their homework. And San Francisco doesn't have a Gaslamp Quarter. That's just not a thing. So there was that. And then going up in the building where she works and they look out and I'm like, that doesn't remotely look like San Francisco. I'm like, you couldn't green screen that and put it in after? I'm like, okay. So continuity was an issue. Also, she goes out on this olive branch thing in a snow blizzard that's supposed to be the big winter storm from hell. And the next morning they wake up, no snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there was things like that. You just go, wait, what? but the thing is, and this is what pissed me off about it, was that they obviously put the money in it. They had decent actors. They had Lindsay Wagner. They brought her back, and they had, obvious production quality money in the budget because the sound was good, the lighting was decent, so it wasn't like all of the other parts were there. But to have a really poorly written script that there were huge holes, like they kind of alluded to the fact that Haley and her brother were native, but they weren't,
Right.
because they talked about naming ceremony. It's it just either say it or don't, because the disparity between that and then you see Lindsay and you're like, okay, how is this playing out? Why are we not getting this backstory? Because obviously the parents dying at an early age for her was a thing, but yet we never talk about it, so, and yet they try to use it as a stumbling block to why Haley couldn't go back to that life, but then it was immediately bye.
So I think the naming ceremony, though, was Masonry, the California girl.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I don't think
But the
that was
fact
Haley.
that she knew that and knew what it was and used it in reference as if she had knowledge and how that all works, it's not something people typically talk about if they're not part of the community. You know what I mean? It's not something you bring up naturally, so, and then to sit there and say her brother worked in the tech field beforehand, before he became this ranch person, and that at the end, when everything was all solved because she got the big check at the end, I know I'm spoiling it, but please, it's a romance, so we know what the formula is. But she gets this big check and yada, 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 yada. And then she turns to her brother and goes, well, you're good with numbers. How did we get in the situation we were in before? It's like, so there were things that they gave plot devices and they didn't really solve it. Or they didn't tie it up that was in a way that was believable. And then the last thing I'll complain about is that they go on, or they say, or they have their first date and she has the social media emergency, and Kate blows it off like, oh, well, whatever that is, and I'm like, what year are we in? Even rural communities have social media presence. They know what that shit is. I mean, it's like they tried to apply 1991 internet knowledge to the current period. Oh, and the last thing, before, and I'll let you guys go. Last thing.
I want to jump in on that last one, though.
Okay.
I think part of Kate's issue there I finally understood it when she got to her backstory, and that growing up as a socialite, social media was probably a weapon that she's trying to avoid.
Yeah, but they didn't make that a thing.
They didn't. I know.
And so it's like, that's a supposition that you put in, but it's not necessarily something that was part of the script. That's what I'm saying. That's my complaint. The writing was subpar in this. I think there were a lot of plot holes that they just glossed right over to get to the two women kissing in the end. I think that it could have been better in that respect. And my ratings were reflected. The last thing I'll say, every gay boy under this mistletoed sky, fake Christmas garland in rural America. I mean, everything. And then flocked white fake trees. I'm like, either you film it in a place that has snow, or you make it snowy all the time and put the money in the budget. There's those kinds of things. I just went, it threw me out of the movie over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, could we just, I mean, obviously you have a talented cast, you have a talented crew. What's going on here in the middle? That's the thing that killed it for me. But it's not, I'm not saying don't watch it.
No, of course not. All right. MD New, did you have anything that stuck in your craw?
So Baz brings up every point that I thought of when I was watching the movie. It was like, clearly that wasn't San Francisco that they were in. Clearly the winter storm that was supposed to be there wasn't. But given the nature of the movie, I was willing to forgive a lot of it, just because it's very common in most movies that you see. I mean, even in big budget movies, how many times have we seen Vancouver used for a major
True,
US city?
Hmm.
true.
And you kind of, so it was like, okay, I'm willing to overlook this. Or another big one that drives me bananas, and I'm surprised that we see it in movies these days, not in this movie, but still in modern movies, is day for night.
Yeah, yeah.
That just, so it's those types of things. It's like, yeah, okay, I totally, so I'm nodding my head over here because I was agreeing with everything you were saying, Baz. It was like, oh yeah, that's so not San Francisco. Or where is this big snowstorm that, was, all of a sudden it's a bright sunny, shiny day the next day. So yeah, but for me, I was willing to overlook it just because the cast and the acting were so good. And I really liked the story overall. I thought it was a very good story, and I loved the fact, like you guys had said, was that the gay was a non-issue,
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
and that to me that was just like, this is how movies should be.
Yep. So for me, the location thing wasn't as big a deal only because I've never lived in California, so didn't recognize the locations. Um, but there was a storytelling thing that did bother me when she was in the city, I'll say it that way, and social media was a thing and her work life was blowing up. There were all these pop-ups on the screen that her phone was blowing up, and that represented her life as a busy tech or a busy marketing person in this company, and it was all that. And then they started to dwindle away as she got more and more rural, and she had a little bit in the interaction with Kate and their hookup, and then they sort of stopped. And I thought, okay, the pop-up tech stuff is to represent how chaotic her life is in the city. But then she goes back to the city and it never happens again.
Yeah.
I was like, "Ugh, they missed the ball
Again,
on that one."
continuity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they totally missed the ball on a visual storytelling element that I think would have made her final decision even more
Yep.
believable. Certainly would
Yep.
have given it more heart. The other thing had nothing to do with the movie and my own linguistic weirdness. I do not live in a culture that uses the term meemaw or pawpaw. However, linguistically, the fact that they've developed separately, because meemaw kind of sounds like my mother, though it means grandmother, they did not go with peepaw as grandfather.
Or papa, which is what it's also used.
Right. And so I'm like, why are these terms and what the and so I kind of had to go down a linguistic rabbit hole that had nothing to do with the movie. But because
No,
they
but again, it's continuity and research.
Mhm.
Somebody really just went, yeah, and just let's just keep filming, okay.
Right.
And then you have the whole thing about her brother going out and reining in the goats, and it's just like a couple of horses, and then they come around a barn and there's like 4 goats are going, what the hell are you doing chasing us? It wasn't like it was Death with Wolves or something kind of epic kind of montage. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I could send my mom out to go make those goats. It'd be more entertaining too than a camera chase. But yeah, I just
Did you have
I
a
liked
favorite
it. I
moment?
could, huh?
Did you have a
Oh,
favorite moment?
um, yeah, actually, one of the things I liked was the conversation. Although, the food thing was another issue I had with the movie. Yeah, but the I liked the moment, the scene between her brother, and I cannot think of what the hell his name is now, the character name. Um,
Yeah, the
Charles,
brothers
right?
Charles, yeah.
Yeah. Charles, Haley, and Mima that were sitting there at the table at lunch and were having that family get together. But it was the discussion that she had with her grandmother beforehand, where she's trying to reconcile what her next choices are going to be. And says, okay, let's eat up, and then you guys can go off and do your thing. She takes a couple of grapes and they get up and leave. Again, continuity. Can we
Well,
wrap
but
this up, kid?
yeah, but in all fairness, they do that in every movie and every TV show. They do these elaborate spreads of food that would take any typical family an hour or two to make. And then they do like one bite and, oh, I've got to go off to work, or oh, I'm heading to school, or oh, we're running late. Or so again, those were the little things that, yes, are frustrating, but for me, I was totally able to just get past it because, we all know that that's what they do.
Well, and as an actor, I can tell you that is done for retake purposes. Because if
I
you
no,
actually
I
were to clear the plate and then have to refill it, you're never going to match.
Mhm.
no, yeah, no, and I get all of that stuff, but it just seemed, again, It was a scene where it was a setup for something,
So
and it really had, I mean, they could have just had the conversation around her grandmother making something for dinner, the setting of a lunch get together meeting, family meeting kind of thing just seemed like it was a big setup with no payoff. And that's what I'm talking about.
so what was your favorite scene?
But I like the conversation that
Okay.
she had between Haley and her grandmother, where her grandmother was trying to get her to see the value of her roots. And that was but again, it's Lindsay Wagner, I just
How about you, Marvin?
put her in a scene and I'm happy, so there you go.
So for me, I really liked the scene, and it's probably just doesn't work, but I really liked the scenes with masonry because that character worked every single nerve I've got.
Oh yeah. She's scenery chewed.
Oh yeah, she was just like she ate up every moment she had, and she was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I especially love one of the lines was, the environment, picking up the paper.
Yes.
It was just like, oh my gosh, that's so over the top, and yet we all know people like that.
Yeah.
So,
unfortunately for California too.
I was gonna say, you guys probably a little more than me.
Yeah.
To a Midwesterner, she represented a typical California girl of that age.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and I could tell that's what the writers were doing.
Mhm.
It was like they needed the embodiment of a granola,
Mhm.
And
hippie
I think it was
California, and she
interesting.
was it.
I think it was interesting now that you bring that up, that they also kind of hinted at that she wasn't necessarily a lesbian because she
Right.
eyed Charles at the end.
Right.
So it was kind of this, is she polyamorous? Is she, so there was this queer element to her that, and it wasn't a thing that it's there, and queer people are going to see that.
Yep, 100%.
Well, and it was that thing where, like all good actors and actresses, you say more without saying anything than you do with saying words. So it's that moment of, like, she had that moment of where she just looked at him.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, I would love to know if that was an intention of the directing, or if that was just something that the character decided to do and the director instantly loved it and said, okay, we don't need to do any more, but that's perfect. So I don't know, for me, that caught, really, she really was just a lot of fun for me. And I also liked the fact that, they made her the typical hippie, but then you get a little bit more information about her and find out that she's a social media influencer and pulls in $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was very well done. It was like, okay, it wasn't just the one-dimensional
Yep.
character. They gave her just enough to make her interesting. It was like, okay, very well done. Yeah. So for me, I just loved every scene she was in, as much as she annoyed me.
Can I tell you also the life hack of Kate, where she only had colored chapstick and she decided to use matches for mascara? And I'm like, you go, girl, you survival bitch.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bear Grylls didn't come up with that.
Nice. All right. Should we move on to our ratings?
Sure.
You didn't say what your favorite part was.
Oh, my favorite part was when Haley serves the other rancher the final kick to the ass. 100%. Those are the moments I live for.
Yeah.
Right. Get out of here, you villain.
Mm-hmm.
Before Jamie Summers goes chasing your ass out. Go on, Mima.
All right. Paz, let's do your numbers first.
Mine are 3s across the board, with the exception of screenplay. I'm going to give that a 1 because I really struggled with staying in the moment because of the holes in the continuity of the script and of the scene setup. So that really took me out of it. And I think that was the writing. It was due to the writing. I don't necessarily mind formulaic because I'm not a big person that worries about spoilers. When people tell me spoilers, unless it's a mystery, then I don't want to know who it is because I like figuring it out. But otherwise, if people say, oh, this is how it is, a happy ending, or I don't care. That part does, because I like the journey anyway. So, but the other one that I'll knock down is the director. I'm going to give the director a 2 because I think the director could have fixed a lot of this stuff. And they, like I said, they had the money. It was clear they had the money to some degree because everything else was there. That's what was so frustrating about this movie for me, was that all of the evidence points to quality work, and yet there's these little things that are so important for keeping a movie afloat. And I think they just tripped up on that. So my overall is going to be a 3.
All right. Mine are mostly 4s. Again, I went into it expecting a Hallmark card on screen, and I got it. And so I also went into it expecting a warm, fuzzy, happy holiday movie, and I got that. So I was happy with pretty much everything. Like you, I had 2 3s. For me, it was also director who missed some things. The things we've all shared, plus the things you enlightened that I didn't know about. But also queer themes. I mean, we had a lesbian couple and whatever masonry
Hey,
was.
whatever makes us.
But that's it. And again, I love that I can say 3 to that because it meant that it wasn't an issue in the film. They didn't have to make an issue of all of the queer elements of life. These were just people having a story. So when I say 3, I'm only saying 3 because of quantity, not quality. Quality for me, that was a 5. The way that was told with the girls just being themselves, beautiful. So my overall ended up at a 4. Marvin?
Well, I'm going to be the Pollyanna of the group because, like I
go,
said,
go
I
for it.
really liked this movie. I really enjoyed it. But I was very forgiving. I forgave. I noticed everything that you guys had talked about, that we talked about, but I forgave it just because of the nature of the movie and the fact that I really liked it. So for the overall production, despite all the issues it had, I gave it a good solid 4.5. I know, Baz, don't hit me. The
Yeah,
screenwriting, I
go
really
for
liked
it.
this. I really liked the story, so I gave that a 5 because I was absolutely enthralled. I thought it was exactly what I wanted to see and get from it going in. The sound and the lighting and the score and all that, I really liked that. I thought they did a good job. I gave it that a 4.5 as well. Um, the the art direction and the costumes, again, I forgave a lot, so I gave that a good solid 4. The casting, 4. Actually, I'm sorry, casting, I gave it a 5 because I just thought every actor in that was perfect. I couldn't imagine anybody else. The direction, again, I gave it a 4. And the queer themes, and Vance, I'm going to be the complete opposite of you on that, is I'm giving it a 5 because the whole queer issue was a non-issue.
Nice.
It was people living their lives, and it wasn't this drama about a coming out story or the family having issues. It was just two people with their baggage having issues. So yeah, I thought that worked for me. So that ends up being, I think if I figured it out right, about a 4.5,
Nice.
4.5.
Solid. So, folks, listeners, watchers, viewers, pick up this movie. It's on Prime. You can watch it for free if you have a Prime account. And it's a definite feel good for kicking off your holiday season.
And I
100%.
will tell you that we have several other Christmas movies for people to watch that we have reviews of from last year. I will put them down, links below, so people can go look at those reviews that we had for films that were from last year, like Single All the Way and so on and so forth. So definitely check those out as well, and the links will be provided down below.
Yep. And go show our guest reviewers some love. MD New. You can find him on all the socials. He has a great website. He writes some phenomenal books, including he has a holiday book out that you should definitely read, which was why we invited him to join us. So please go show him the love as well.
Thanks. Yeah.
And
And
now,
it's a lesbian story as well.
exactly.
There you go.
It ties in perfect.
Yeah, right. Shameless
Perfect.
plug.
All right. On to what won the week for Baz and I. And we'll cut there.
Excellent.
Cool. Thank you so much. So, what are you on about this week?
I am on about, first of all, sad news. We lost Bob McGrath, original cast member from Sesame Street, someone that I grew up with. And as a young queer boy, I had a little bit of a crush on him. I thought he was kind of cute. So a little sad about that. But 90 years, good long life. So
Yeah.
I'll vote to him, and that's really kind of sad because again, it points out how old I've gotten. So, yeah. Second, can we stop associating Myo Fuckopoulos with the queer community? Stop saying ex-gay. Just take it out. He's a stupid motherfucker who will grift for any reason. Can we just stop associating him with the community? He never was in. It was a ploy. It was something to get attention. This is a total celebrity whore, and we just need to call him out for what he is. But stop associating him with the community. Just come on, media. Just stop it. Last thing, James Woods has decided to sue the DNC for ruining his career. Motherfucker, you screw underage girls, allegedly, and you are out there promoting some of the weirdest, stupid crap on the planet. Don't blame the DNC for your own fucking decisions and your own rants. That's on you. So that's who I was on about this week. My Who Won the Week is actually really cool. So that's all my downside. So now you tell me yours, what you were on about.
All right. I've got two onabouts. One, in light of the conservative movement to make voting more difficult for people, especially the people they want to hate and the people they want to repress, Georgia voters have surpassed the early voting record by 3 times the previous number. Go, Georgia. Make your voices count.
Yep.
Make them loud. Do not let these motherfuckers take away your vote.
Yep. All about that.
1, I'm 100% about that. 2, Intel, that's right, the hardware company, has written deepfake detection software. It's called Fake Catcher, and it is currently clocking in at about 96% accurate in catching real-time deepfakes. 100% behind that.
Yay.
Yes, because we need to be able to catch these before they happen. Or at least while they're happening.
And especially with people who are in politics or in celebrities, that it can ruin their brand. So yeah, totally.
Ruin their brand. It leads to so much misinformation. It's time to stop this. So
not like we don't have enough of that already.
I know. So kudos to Intel. All right. Well, since your win the week sounds pretty big, I'll just give my simple one. The U.S. Senate finally did something I approve of in that they officially passed the Respect for Marriage Act. And if you haven't been reading closely, what that says is it's not necessarily a blanket all states have to allow you to get married.
Not everything that we wanted.
It is still a state decision, but across the U.S., if you are married in a state that allows it, every other state has to respect it. So it's still going to come down to local voting. You need to change the rules the laws in your state if you want to have marriage just be an equal thing, so that we don't have second-class citizens in this country. God damn it. Anyway, go Senate. Yeah, at least you got something. Come on, House, vote.
Okay, so mine is a gamer thing, and I'm not a gamer, but I found this article, and the first person I thought of was Vance. And he might know about it, but I want to bring it up because I thought it was kind of cool. So Sony's new video game, God of War Ragnarok, was published, and there was a heartfelt request from a queer programmer who was part of the development team. And evidently he met his boyfriend / partner. They're not quite clear in the article, and I'll include the link to it from Pink News, that were the ones who reported that I saw. He says that Henrik explained, this is the guy who they're talking about that wrote this or was part of the story, is senior gameplay programmer Sam Hendrick, and explained the tragic story in a Twitter thread on November 18th, in which he got to pitch one of his many favorite side quests in a dedication to his late partner. And what it was is that it basically said that he says, before delving into the story, he urged players to seek it out for yourself first. There's an area called, it's kind of like an additional quest. It's not part of the main quest story. He said that he met another queer game programmer Jake Snipes in 2019 after the two were set to work on this game together. They both loved Carly Rae Jepsen and Death Note and soon became really close friends, and before long, we became more than that. The two fell madly in love with each other while working on the project and went on to a road trip across the US together. But their favorite pastime was staying in on weekends and play their favorite games together and adventuring around LA and California. I began to feel truly at home, he said. When within the development community, the couple became notorious for baking and bringing anything they made into the studio, and even won a pie baking competition together. Hendricks and Snipes were especially adamant about leaving a symbol of God of War Ragnarok to represent their love for each other. He once suggested simply a heart with our initials in Norse runes carved into this world that we made. But in 2020, Snipes passed away due to complications with epilepsy, which left Hendrick completely heartbroken. The next 3 months were incredibly difficult for the developer, saying he hardly wanted to be alive. But once he returned from grieving, he was set on leaving some piece of him within the game. Sam Hendrick explained that after talking to game director Eric Williams about the idea of an ode to Snipes, he made it so much more. I told Eric and the team about Jake's suggestion of our initials carved into a heart, and he said that he and the team returned with that and something even more special, he said. A story of two men who find each other in an often cruel world and who find a place to belong simply with each other. The side quest is named Across the Realms and was created as a story to be one many queer people will know and follow. So I kind of thought that was pretty fucking epic, and who knew Sony could have the heart to do that? So
That's awesome.
they won my week.
That is awesome. Not a game I've played personally, though I kind of want to. We just don't have a PlayStation in the house. But if folks are video gamers and looking for stories along this line, in addition to Ragnarok, I can also recommend Guild Wars 2. The most recent expansion to Guild Wars 2 sees two iconic characters in that your character adventures in and out of their worlds, sees two women come together and get married at the end of the storyline, which is beautiful. One of the purchasable expansions also shows a gay pirate captain whose unfortunately male lover and son were murdered, but this has always been a part of the Guild Wars world. So there's actually an entire race that is kind of considered pansexual. I mean, they're tree-based. They are actually born from a tree. They're not live-born. And they're just kind of like, oh, but that's who I want to love right now. Right. So you can actually play a pansexual race as well in this game. So the games are appearing and they're showing up. But a story like this in Ragnarok, where the game, the leads have said, yes, developer, we will put your story in there because you've been part of our family. Hell yeah.
So that's who won my week. I thought it was a positive note to end up. A little sad, bittersweet, but positive.
Very, very. All right, folks, Written on the Edge is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Buy merch, join our Patreon. Just go to YouTube and like it, and maybe share it with like one other person. That's all we ask. Happy holidays. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye now.
What's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.